it's been revealed too from questions on notice out of the recent round of Senate estimates, the sheer number of federal public servants who are working from home. Almost 50% of the 33,000 staff within Services Australia have an approved working from home arrangement. Now, somehow, roughly 42% of staff in service delivery roles, so these are customer facing, you'd assume, do so working from home for part of the week. And what's particularly galling is that it's very few of the junior or lower paid employees, those earning $70,000 or under, who are working from home. Instead, it's a lot of the big earners, 1,500 plus public servants earning around $168,000, so 3 times the median Australian salary. Well, they're earning that money working from home 3 or more days a week. Joining me now, Sky's political editor Andrew Clennell, and a fair journalist. I'll give you that. You can claim that mantle, Andrew. You are tough on both sides and you call it pretty straight, even if they don't like it. I'll get into Labor's National Conference in a moment, but those stats, those working from home stats, I just can't fathom how you do your job as a federal public servant in that sort of role, in a customer-facing role, if you're working from home.
Well, of course, a lot of these people are 2 or 3 days, as you say, not the 5 days working from home. But you would expect if it's service delivery, as you say, you'd have to be in the office of facing people the entire time. So there needs to be a bigger drill down on that. But I can't see a politician taking it on after Jane Hume at the last election, when it was extrapolated to be a kind of a policy that would affect everyone. Labor really weaponised that. So it's going to be a tough one for the Libs to ever take on again, I think. Unless they're in government, then you can sort of approach these things.
You know, it was interesting when I was in the UK, they were telling me that 90% of people are back at work in the UK. And I mean, they obviously suffered the lockdowns that we did around the country. And in the Victorian state election, Jacinta Allen has legislated the right to work from home, not just for public servants, but for private sector employees. So she's likely to have polling that says this is a vote winner, even if it's making employers basically take their businesses out of Victoria.
If you give people anything on the IR front, history shows it's very difficult to rake it back. Interesting for the POMs, though. I mean, they've got terrible train services and the like. They're all struggling through that, you know. I mean, in a lot of capital cities of Australia, it's a lot easier to get to work than England.
Let's go to that poll from Newgate today, the mood of the nation. It dropped into the Australia, the Savo. It reads as a tale of woe. Almost 70% of Australians feel the country's headed in the wrong direction. 6 in 10 believe immigration's way too high. Of course, that bodes well for One Nation. Also telling too, Labor's only 1 point ahead of One Nation when it comes to cost of living, and that's still by and away the number one issue for people, isn't it?
What a shocking figure for the coalition. I mean, I know it's really, really bad for Labor as well, Peter. Don't get me wrong, but Angus Taylor, he's on about cost of living. He's on about immigration every day. Why can't he get a lift out of this? Why is he getting cleaned up by Pauline every day? I mean, she's the one leading the 7 and 9 newses every second night. She's the one who's really got that rock star feel. And that's what Angus Taylor's really battling against. He can't get his message out. He's got the policies that address that polling, and no one's listening to him. That's the problem he's got at the moment. I mean, even, you know, a lot of the start of this show, you've spoken about Pauline. But we all are. I did on my show. You know, the 6 p.m. news does she's the one providing the headlines and the news. And, yeah, maybe some of it is cynical. Maybe some of it is her and James Ashby, you know, saying we can come out and make some outlandish statements and we'll get more and more publicity and drum it up, get her front and centre. It's working. The only way that vote's going to be reduced is when people out there, including people watching this show, some of whom email me and say give One Nation a go because they're different, realise that she's a politician just like Anthony Albanese and Angus Taylor are. Nothing more and nothing less, to be held to the same standards, and if ever in government, to have the same issues to grapple with, which are a lot simpler than a bunch of slogans to deal with. So like that.
Yeah, but let me jump in here.
That is where things need to come to. Otherwise, she is going to get 30% at the federal election. If people take a view that she's somehow above politics, then she's going to go really well.
Let me jump in there, because that was the whole point of my editorial. Those on the left, the ABC and others, The Guardian, they go after her thinking that somehow they can halt her rise. I argue they don't. They actually just kick her in to better and better numbers. A lot of the commercial networks, you know, they're always going to run the government. It's got the biggest megaphone, and they run a counter to the government. So the counter to the government is usually one individual. Traditionally, obviously, it's been the opposition. But that's now double-headed. It's either Angus Taylor or Pauline Hanson. And when the editors are sitting down at night, and you know what it's like, they're putting together the packages, they're looking for colour and movement. There's a lot more colour and movement, even if
Angus Taylor frustrates as Pauline Hanson humiliates him in public. Good day, and here is the judgment you will not hear from the coalition's own strategists. Angus Taylor is not losing to Pauline Hanson because she is a better communicator. He is losing because his own party has nothing left to sell, and Hanson is simply the loudest voice standing in the wreckage. Before we get into why this matters far beyond one leader's bruised ego, if you want political analysis that owes nothing to any party room and exists purely to hold power accountable, subscribe and hit that notification bell. Aussie Insider does not run cover for Labour, the Coalition, or One Nation. We call outcomes as we see them, full stop. Here is the judgment, plain and simple. Angus Taylor talking about cost of living and immigration every single day and still getting outflanked by Pauline Hanson is not bad luck. It is a diagnosis. Recent polling has shown Taylor's net approval sitting deep in negative territory, with preferred Prime Minister numbers languishing around the high teens, well behind both Albanese and Hanson herself. When your own party is the alternative government and you are polling behind the leader of a minor party on the question of who should actually run the country, that is not a messaging problem. That is a credibility collapse. Now for the context, and this is where it gets uncomfortable for coalition loyalists. The coalition primary vote has been sitting in the high teens to low 20s in multiple polls this year, a genuinely shocking result for what is supposed to be Australia's alternative government. Hanson, meanwhile, has repeatedly polled ahead of the coalition on the primary vote, at times running Labour close on a two-party basis. So when Andrew Clennell asks why Taylor cannot get a lift despite hammering cost of living every day, the honest answer is that voters are not rejecting the message. They are rejecting the messenger, and more precisely, they are rejecting the brand he represents. This is where the story gets worse for Taylor specifically. Hanson does not need a shadow cabinet reshuffle or a party room to look credible, because she has spent decades cultivating a singular identity as the outsider who says what others will not. Taylor is trying to run an insurgent message, cost of living pain, immigration pressure, from inside an institution that voters increasingly associate with the same failures they are angry about. You cannot out-populist a genuine populist while wearing the uniform of the political establishment. That is not a criticism of conviction, it is simply how political branding works, and it explains precisely why Hanson leads the 7 and 9 bulletins while Taylor struggles for a single grab. Here is why this actually matters to you, beyond the horse race numbers. When the opposition cannot land a punch on cost of living, the government faces less genuine pressure to act decisively, and when One Nation becomes the default outlet for that anger instead of a credible alternative government, you are left choosing between an incumbent you are frustrated with and a minor party with no realistic pathway to forming government on its own. That is a genuine problem for accountability in this country, regardless of which side you lean toward, because a weak opposition lets any government coast. This is the part nobody in the coalition party room wants to say out loud. Taylor's struggle is not really about Pauline Hanson at all. It is about a party that spent years defined by what it opposed rather than what it offered, and now finds itself with no reservoir of trust to draw on when it actually needs to look decisive. Rebuilding that trust was never going to happen through daily talking points alone, no matter how disciplined the messaging discipline is on cost of living. So do not mistake this for sympathy toward Hanson's politics, and do not mistake it for an endorsement of Labour's record either. Both major parties have spent this term managing perception more than delivering outcomes, and Hanson has simply been the beneficiary of that vacuum. The real question is whether the coalition can offer Australians something more substantial than frustration before the next contest, or whether the vacuum keeps growing. We will keep tracking whether Taylor can close that gap, or whether this becomes the defining weakness of his leadership. Thank you for watching.